Well, I absolutely love this story. I mean, who all has read the story by Francine Rivers, Living Love? Exactly. So here it is. Holy, I don't even know where to begin because I marked up this entire story because it just meant so much to me.
Yes.
I don't know. What jumped out at you? I guess we could go over this. I kind of think the questions are a little, I mean, some of them are good questions. They're said on page 184 about visit and the stand and on and on and on. But I guess before we do that, just tell me what jumped out at you in this amazing story about Rahab. At least I can say her name right, Rahab, instead of whatever her last name was.
Tamar.
Tamar.
Tamar. Yeah, Rahab.
Tamar.
I know. Good grief.
Have you ever thought about how many wonderful guy names there are from the Bible, but there's not that many great female names from the Bible?
Yeah.
I thought that when we were trying to figure out a name for Grace, because we wanted it to be like biblical somehow, and there weren't really very many good options.
Good call not going with Rahab.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So I don't know about you guys. I have to throw this out there. When I was reading this, and I was digging more into just like half of the portion, not all of it. And I could be wrong, but no joke. What broke my heart the most about this is when you really dig into all that she went through. Doesn't it kind of remind you about how women are towards their bodies this day and age? I mean, I really took it as knowing that her body was just abused and used as a tool, and she was only good enough because of her body. And it's just like, I don't know, it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks of the kind of world that we live in, and how I feel too many women don't appreciate themselves when all along she's trying to, but she has no choices because her dad is totally against her and she knows what's happening is wrong, but she's trying to make right from it. So as I was reading, my brain just kept going back and forth of, I don't know, I kind of put it into the perspective of my middle school and high schoolers that I try to lead on Wednesday nights. And it just really made me hit my heart the most of the, of the pain that I feel for a lot of these preteens and teenagers and how they look at their body. And I think this right here would bless them so much if they read of your body is supposed to be the temple of Christ. It's not supposed to be made of men looking at you of, ooh, I'm going to marry her because her body's so good. I mean, that's totally what she went through. So that's kind of where, as I was reading, I was trying to understand their times and where's our time right now. So
one of the things that got me with this, reading this, I read this book probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And in reading through this particular story again at this time in my life, it totally took on a new meaning for me because my daughter this past week just celebrated a 3-year anniversary of sobriety. And she had been through so much in her life. And in reading this story this time, it gave me so much hope and so much, I just can't explain the feelings that I had in reading through this time, because in seeing how that God used Rahab in spite of all of those things in her past, and knowing and seeing now what God is doing through my daughter's life and how he's using her and working through her in spite of those things in her past. And the same thing with Rahab, how God used those terrible things that happened to her and the way that, her father put her into this position and everything. But yet God used that to make her into the woman that she became. Yeah. And how that, it's, as a mom, it's really hard to see your child struggle and to go through the things that she went through and her addictions and stuff. But to turn that over to God and then to be able to see how that God can use all of that, those terrible things that happened in her life, but God can use those to make her into the vessel that he needs her to be now, and to use those things in her life in a positive way. It really opened my eyes, I think, a lot, and helped me to be even more thankful and more grateful for the that she's been on. You know, I'm thankful for where she is now, but I don't know that I've always been thankful for what she went through. And I think the Lord has opened my eyes more to be able to see that, how that he used that time in her life to bring her to where she is right now.
So, wow. So are you able, I mean, just because I can't imagine that experience as a mom, are you able to say that you're thankful for that part that she did go through? And you don't have to if you can't. I mean,
I don't know that I'm completely there, but I'm learning to be there.
right.
You know, I'm seeing so much of the positive side of it now. It was a very dark road and very difficult to walk down, but
Riley freaking is like a napkin.
be thankful for it. I don't know that I'm completely there yet, but I'm learning.
Right. I can't. Yeah. And I think God understands that, you know, those are hard things for us to be able to utter out of our mouths. Those are, you know, man. But it has, I mean, I hope I'm not speaking, but I think at least in this story, we know that that's what shaped her. That's what made her. And what I marvel at is that Rahab was still this rock, this example to her family, even though the world would have looked at her as not an example, not a rock, she was nothing in the eyes of everybody else. But because of her faith, even in a God that she really didn't know. That's what I thought was crazy. You know, she just had the desire to want to know him. Because God had laid that on her heart, but she didn't have that community. She didn't have those people. She had to be the light in the dark. Yeah.
She had to learn a lot of that on her own, and that's what made me look up to her, was knowing that she was yearning so much for who God was, that by her doing it by herself, like you're saying, like she didn't have really any examples. She had nobody to go to. If anything, she was fearful of, okay, if I go this avenue and if I get caught, you know, she already knew what was going to happen to her. And so as much as she was trying to protect not only her life, but the life of her family, despite what her family was doing against her, she just had this yearning in a way that I was like, you know, I don't know. It was mind blowing to me of her strength and her trying to find those answers on her own. And she wasn't giving up.
Claire, what part stuck out to you?
Well, there were a couple parts that I kept seeing the author work in pieces that spoke to salvation in Christ, and those were the parts that stuck out to me. I just like ate up the story. I read the whole thing through in like one sitting, I think.
It was me today.
Yeah, well, and I think it was because I was also in the mindset of, I know this is a like redemption story, and I need to get to the redemption part. Like I need that, like, I don't know, that piece in it, because I know it's coming. But I loved seeing those things. Like she specifically said to her family, I think, you know, I'm going to lay the crimson tassel out the window, and that will signify. I don't even know if she said. I don't think she said the word salvation, but she said, "Hold on, I've got it. Oh, there it is. Oh, and death will pass us by." Whenever she would hang the crimson rope out. And then later on it even says that when Salmon, I guess that's how you say his name, Salmon, I don't know, when he was getting the manna, he calls it the bread of heaven, and how he holds it reverently. I don't know. I just kept seeing, he sees this as a free gift from God, keeping him alive. Like there were just all these like little things pointing towards salvation. And
Claire, where's that part about the crimson rope and death will pass us by?
it's on 137, the very top. It's like the first.
That's really
sentence.
good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it just, I mean, that's what all these stories really are about. But I mean, specifically for Rahab, I just loved seeing those little tidbits that Francine Rivers would put in there. And I think one of the things that I was grateful for that I had never thought about before was how she prefaces Rahab becoming a harlot because of the king and because of her father giving her away and stuff like that. And in the scriptural account, we don't really get to know why she became a harlot, at least unless I'm remembering it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But I always just assumed that like it was her terrible decision,
I am with you there.
And so I've always seen it from that perspective of, even more how gracious is the Lord to take someone who made such a dumb decision and has restored their life and even brought Jesus to us through that line. But to see it in a different way is just so much more merciful and makes sense culturally that could possibly have been the reason. And in scripture, not what it says here in the recount that she gives us in the beginning of the chapter here, but and maybe it's a version difference. But when I studied this before, it said Rahab who had been a prostitute, or Rahab who was, indicating like a past tense, like that had been her lifestyle, and how that viewpoint was supported by how she now sold. They talked about her house and how she made linens and how that was like what she did to support herself in the scriptural details. And so I kind of always clung to like it was her life, but she gave it up because she knew it was bad. And but I really appreciated that little preface that she gives us of why, because I think it just, I don't know, softened my heart, I guess, to her life choices.
Well, and think of, as you're talking about that, it makes me think about comparing her to Tamar as well. And they both were in the same. They both were submissive by the men in their lives. Their father, for Pete's sakes. My goodness.
There are lots of similarities, I think.
Yeah.
To these
Absolutely.
two stories. I mean, just like
both the dads didn't care, if you think about it. And that's what, again, I mean, right in the very beginning, my reaction was almost identical to Tamar, where I was just like, I can't even imagine my dad treating me that way. And I'm thinking, what is wrong with these fathers? Like, you're looking at them like they're just scumbags. And it just really bothered me of, like you guys were saying, right away, I was like, wait a minute, Tamar went through the same exact thing. The way that she's treated, Rahab is treated. And I think that's when I was like, I was the same thing about the whole redemption. I'm like, oh man, just get me to the point. What happened? It was.
Well, and one thing that both of these stories have, both of these women have, I don't know, I've been listening to a few sermons. I don't know if it was a sermon that Craig had listened to, or Amber, if it was your pastor. And so you'll know if it was your pastor, because I'm listening to his sermon still.
Because he's just that good.
He's awesome.
I know.
He's amazing. One of them said that when stuff in your life goes wrong, like when you get treated badly, to have your mind do one thing and your heart do another. Like a lot of people, their hearts get hard. But to not let your heart let your heart be soft as a.
That was Pastor Brian. I remember exactly what you're talking about.
To have your heart be as soft as like a lamb, and your your mind to be as like cunning as a lion. So instead of your heart being hardened,
here it is. Develop the skin of a rhino and the heart of a teddy bear.
there you go.
I had it in my sermon journal right here.
Love it. And I, through what we're going, I know through what a bunch of people are going through, I just felt like that is so applicable. And these ladies, because I think of their focus on the Lord, that's what they do. Like, they are cunning, like they needed to do what they needed to do to save their lives and to eventually continue the line to Christ. But their hearts were very soft. I mean, their hearts were very soft towards the Lord, towards, like with Rahab, with the people of the Lord that came, that she interacted with. But she was also very cunning, you know, with how she knew the king would respond, and like she knew people really well. And I don't know, that really, I kept thinking of that. And obviously I didn't remember his terminology very well from Pastor Brian, but that really, when he said that, it really stuck out to me. And then it really kept replaying in my mind when I was reading this.
Hey, Amber, where can we get Pastor Brian's sermon?
Just go to northplacechurch.com, and he's going through a series right now called 42.
Yeah.
That one was, I didn't write the date. Most of the time I put the date at the top of my journals.
It was a recent one, I
Let's
feel
see.
like.
It was
Why would you run the whole wiring when it's probably just either
one, it was like 3 sermons ago, 3 Sundays ago. Where his first point in this sermon, so his series is called 42. He just turned 43 years old, so he's picked out 42 life principles that he's learned along his life. And as he states, it started off as a very personal thing. Then he shared it with the staff of his church, and they said, our church needs to hear this. So it turned into a sermon series. And so like this particular one, his first point was don't be a jerk. And he talked a lot about how just be kind. As a believer, you don't have the right to do certain things anymore. You don't have the right to yell at people and get angry, which I did at a basketball ref the other night. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But anyway, yeah. So that sermon, I think, was 3 Sundays ago. I know it was. It wasn't this past Sunday. The Sunday before we had a guest speaker, and it was the Sunday before that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that whole series, 42, is really good.
I, of course, absolutely loved everything that I learned about and just had a glimpse of Rahab. But, and I think I'm going to call him Salmon instead of Salmon or Sol. I don't know. Look, I couldn't say Tamar, but I think I could.
I say we just say salmon, like the fish, because that's how you say the fish.
Right.
Okay, Salmon. So
I don't know.
What page am I on? 116. He kept on talking about, when they were ready to cross the river. And Ephraim was like, how are we going to do that? And they didn't even know how to swim, but he was willing to dive in, even though he was fearful. And I love this. He says, I think the Lord has brought us this far to let us defeat him. The Lord will uphold us. He will give us courage. Fill your lungs with air. Keep your arms outstretched. Kick the frog. The current will carry us. And then he said, he thought that maybe he could do it with his own strength, but he couldn't. He couldn't do it within his own strength. That he had to rely on God to get over across the river. And I just think about that, how often I fall into the trap of thinking, well, Terry's got this. I got it. I can do it.
Hey, Terry, hold on just a second. I'm picking up a lot of like talking background noise. Is it just me?
Well, all of a sudden, the supervisor gets.
I can hear it.
Yeah, I hear it too.
Like does like a quick like face.
Gina was the culprit.
So now you're gonna have to unmute yourself when you want to chat. There you go. So
Sorry, Gina. I couldn't hear Terry. I'm sorry.
No, you're totally fine.
I just think about how, that is one of my weaknesses. That is one of my stumbling blocks when I think that I can do it within my own power. And what a lie that is that I fall trap to sometimes, and how when I think that it's all within Terry's power, I get swept away in the current. I just start flailing, and I don't know, those some of the things that he would say or do, his faith was so, he's like, I don't know how this wall is going to tumble down. I don't know how we are going to get in there and rescue this woman Rahab, but I know that God has brought us this far, and he is not going to fail us. Amber, it reminds me of your daddy's quote just the other day. It was something about, just a tiny little sentence that he wrote
about if the Lord lets me down, it will be the first time ever.
Exactly.
Or something like that.
And it's like, there it is. We can cling to what we know, or what we know to be true, which is his goodness and his mercy that he has brought us this far. He's not going to let us fail. He's not going to let us drown. He's not going to forsake us. He's not going to leave us. And I don't know. I like that guy. I liked him a lot.
His confidence, even when Joshua came and talked to him, something that I had highlighted when Joshua was asking him to go, he said, if you want it done, it needs doing, and that's all I need to know. The Lord speaks through you. To obey you is to obey, and I'll go wherever you want me to go and do whatever you need done. He didn't even want to hear what the mission was. He was just, it doesn't matter, I'll go.
Yeah, and Katrina, I'm glad you brought that up, because I remember reading that and thinking, okay, who is like that in my life? And if I couldn't think of a name really quick, I was like, uh-oh. I need to have at least a couple people like that in my life and I do. But I felt like that was a really, I don't know, like you need to have people in your life that you're surrounding yourself with who maybe aren't, the level of Joshua, because that's, pretty amazing. But it was a good kind of check for me, because I remember thinking, okay, who do I have in my life that I could say that? Like, you need me to go wherever for the Lord? Okay. I don't even need to know the details. I'll get my stuff ready.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember when Johnny told us that he was going to India, and he used that scripture. I'll go where you tell me to go. I'll do what you need me to do. And I remember thinking, who are you? Where did you learn? I mean, what? No, anywhere except that. And holy moly, to be so open and willing to do, and to be able to know and to trust that it's like, okay, I also remember somebody telling me the safest place that he or any of us could ever be is within the will of God. And when we are that vulnerable to lay out and say, okay, Lord, wherever you send me, whatever you want me to do, it's really the safest place we could ever be. And that doesn't make sense to our world. That doesn't make sense to our brain. Yeah.
It reminds me of several quotes that I've read lately of Allie's from her journal, but especially the one that was in her, one of the ones that was in her little, whatever these thingies are called from the funeral. I honestly don't know what my personal legend is. I know that someday God will show me what he wants me to do. God has our whole lives planned out, so I have faith in him. And to know Allie like I know her, if God had told her, Allie, you're going to go by yourself to be a missionary in Iraq, she'd have gone, and it's a lot of conviction has set in over the past 6 weeks to this aunt based on some of the words of this 16-year-old. But I picture her saying, here am I, Lord, send me. And then I think about the story with Belize that I shared with some of y'all, and then Jana shared it on Facebook. Her and Emma went to Belize last year. The trip came around again. They both signed up. When we were in Hawaii, Allie texted Jana and said, Mom, I don't know if I'm supposed to go back to Belize this year. I feel like God wants me to go somewhere else. I just don't know where that is yet. And I mean, we think about that now and what that means to us now, but then it was looking at this going, this girl, this young girl, who that's what we're reading about, by the way, or a young woman, was so willing to just say, I don't know what you have for my life, but whatever it is, here am I, send me.
Yeah.
I don't know that I have that faith. I pray that I do, but I don't know that I do. If God were to tell me, or Jonathan were to walk down the stairs and say, God just called me to be a missionary, I'd be like, oh, snap. Can I sell Plexus where we're going? But anyway, sorry.
No, it's true.
It just, as y'all were talking about that, I was thinking about that quote of hers.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably the second half. It's so hard. I sat down today and read this entire thing too. It was like, I'm not sitting here. And so if it is, forgive me. But when she talked to her family about, letting go of their idols, and making the choice, and on page 136, she says, she talked to her brother, she says, you must decide where to place your faith. You have faith in the king of Jericho, who is a man, but you can put your faith in the King of Kings, the God of Israel. I don't know who these spies are, she goes on and on, but I know this God, the only God I've chosen to put my faith and hope in. You have to decide yourself whether you choose life or death. And how she just confronted the people that she loved. Like you said, she did it all on her own. She didn't have anybody else. And to be able to stand in front of her family, through the men of her family, for goodness sake, the boldness. Wow. It says God could write his name upon the heart of anyone, and he chose her. It's like, wow, Lord.
And he did it just by what she heard that he was doing through the Israelites, and which as a Gentile would be the only way that she would ever really hear, would be through other people. But I just think it's neat, her and Tamar. Tamar heard kind of about it through just being in the family that she was brought into, but not even a really good representation because of how Judah was acting. But it's just so neat how God will call people to him, without the right family, without the right, study of the word or anything like that. Just hearing about him, he will call people to himself.
I like this part. You see, I wrote, this is good stuff. When he is they roast the fish, and he talks about how he held the bread reverently. He didn't eat it all his life, but he's taken it for granted how precious it is. I'm like, oh my goodness, the things that we have in our lives that we take for granted, that we don't ever recognize as anything more than just what we expect. The manna, he saw it day in and day out and day in and day out, and never really recognized the reverence of it, the specialness of it. And said, Lord, please don't let us become whining infants. Don't let us be arrogant in the victories, the sins of our fathers. He said, if only we could be. Anyway, he just talks on and on about how he didn't want to take that for granted anymore. And I just thought, yeah, I mean, I feel like that is my prayer every night when my head hits the pillow, and every morning when I wake up. I feel like Paul sometimes. It's like, I want to do the things that I don't want to do the things that I do, and Lord, forgive me for the things that I do. And it's just this circle over and over and over again. And God's just shaking his head saying, okay, Carrie, it's okay. I know each day is a fresh day. Each day starts over, and it's all right when we fall into that pattern of forgetting all of the things that we sometimes take for granted. And I hate that I do that. And yet I'm so grateful for his grace and forgiveness that even when I stumble and take things for granted, he's like, come here, it's okay. I just, wow. I loved the manna part.
Just like I love the statement on page 140, right in the middle. Like this is what kind of hit home to me, just where my family's life is right now, where it says, be careful not to add to what the Lord has said. So it's like when he talks to you, you must align yourself with the will of God, not the desires of your own heart. And I kind of was like, ooh, because I struggle with that.
Don't we all?
But I mean, I really, really, really struggle with that. And so when I don't know, that's another part where I kind of froze and had to ponder and just really, really reflect, because at least for myself, so many times, whatever the Lord tells me to do, there's times that I do the whole, well, in this, or, okay, you say this, but doesn't this sound better? Or can I do it this way? Cause I think this is better. I mean, it's almost like I have a total like debate with my own father. Which I know my daddy laughs at me all the time, sitting right there next to the Lord anyways, going, this is what I dealt with. But, that's how I treat our Lord now. It's like the same debates I had when my daddy was here. So on top of that, really it's align yourself with the will of God. No ifs, ands, or buts. To really align ourselves with the will of God and not the desires of our heart. And there's a handful of things right now that I kind of did the whole, I swear up and down, like this is supposed to be. And there's just a handful of things that I'm starting to question, but is it really God's time for me to do certain things right now? Is it his will for me to do certain things right now? So my main focus, the past month, especially, with Allie, is align yourself with the will of God. No ifs, ands, or buts. So I don't know. I thought that statement was pretty darn good.
It's really good. Really, it's coming from the character that she puts it coming from, it's such a wise check for us to have. And Terry, as you were talking about Salmon's reaction to the manna, I didn't think this when I was reading it, but as I was sitting here and reading over how he's like so excited for what's coming next, I was thinking, if that were me, I would not be saying, keep us from this, and how he's just so excited to receive the gift that God has so graciously. I would be going, it's about time. Finally, after 40 stinking years, truly, that would be my heart. And so to have just been thinking about that and to be like, oh, well, dang. And then if you look over, so that's on page 145. If you look over on page 144, right before the little like stars that are right there, Rahab's talking to her family and they're like, what more do we need? And she just says, we need patience.
Yeah.
And so to have both of those kind of be kind of rolling in my head now of like, to have patience, waiting for, that's what both sides of this story have. They're both like waiting for this culmination to happen, but they're needing patience to wait for the right timing. And like, how do you handle having the patience, and how do you handle even the timing happening? Really, with the stuff that I know all of us are waiting for, my heart is not being like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited that God's giving us this gift. My heart is, I have been waiting so long, God. Don't you see how patient I'm being?
Yes.
It would not be the right heart. I would not have the right heart.
And you're not even 40 years old. Waiting 40 years.
I know.
That's true. Oh my gosh. I know. It's patience. Oh, patience. There was somewhere in here I underlined, it's like, God doesn't need our help.
Dude, seriously.
He can do whatever, whenever, and yeah. He's God. I remember Beth Moore, one of her studies, just saying, God is so big, he can do whatever he wants. I'm like, period, the end. That's it.
Yes.
I'm not God. There's that beautiful song, When Did I Forget That You're the King of the World? Or King of the Earth? Either one. It's the world. It's like, yeah. When did I ever forget that? Not me. What else? And then when her family, like I said, I think I'm jumping ahead. When her family starts running towards the gate, dragging all the things that they couldn't let go, I thought, wow, how appropriate is that?
I don't think I read that far.
Still clears thunder for next week.
I'm excited for that.
It is really, yeah, her family shows up.
Oh, that's gonna be good.
It is so good. It is so very good. I don't know what some of the questions back here in the back were. You know,
I like this one. Terry, when you're talking about questions, I think just kind of like based off like what we were just saying, it says find God's ways for you. And it says most of us will never face an invading army as Rahab did, but we do face overwhelming situations of other kinds. What kinds of problems are you facing right now? What kinds of choices do you have? So when I read that, it kind of made me go back to aligning your life with God. Because you weren't on last week, but kind of like what Claire, Taryn, and I were talking about last week, just so many circumstances and situations has just been incredibly, incredibly overwhelming. 2017 has almost just like taken my breath away. It just seems like each and every day. It still won't stop. I mean, I'm waiting for the good Lord to just stop having tragedies. It almost seems like every other day for sure. But I think that question was just really good about, whatever we're facing right now, what kind of choices are you making? And I know for me, like with my own personal family, so many of them have even said, well, let me back up a little bit. The family doesn't walk with the Lord completely, especially my husband's side of the family. And so many times they're just like, don't you question God? No. It's the last thing that I ever would want to do. But at the same time, there's times I don't know the right answer for situations. There's times that, like for me, I just shut down. It's like I can't talk to people. I don't want to talk to people. I don't want to see people. I'm so overwhelmed that facing it sometimes is just incredibly difficult. I think sometimes hearing the truth of God is really, really difficult. But that's where it allowed me to go back to really, rereading and trying to relate to Rahab. Like, how does she do it? And again, it still blows my mind that she was yearning so much for God. And it has. I mean, I kind of feel like the past 2.5 years, I never fallen short, but I feel like what I had years ago has come back of just absolutely being in love with God, aligning my life with him, really focusing on his word and yearning for him. And I think that's with any situation. I think that's what he wants the most for us to do is don't run and give up, but just to keep seeking him the best that we possibly can, dig and all that meat of his word. So I don't know, that kind of stuck out at me as find God's ways for you.
I want to read the scripture. It's from James 1:5-8. It's 5-8. It says, if you need wisdom, if you know what God wants you to do, ask him and he'll gladly tell you. He will not resent your asking. But when you ask him, be sure that you really expect him to answer. For a doubtful mind is unsettled as a wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. People like that should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. They can't make up their minds. They waver back and forth in everything they do. And I think about, Rahab, she made her mind up. In the hardest of situation, she made her mind up. She never in a place that she could waver, in a place that I know personally I would waver, she didn't. And again, it's kind of like your quote there, Gina. Align yourself with the will of God. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. That was it. She was the safest place she could ever be was within the will of God. Even when her life as a prostitute with these men coming in and out, and her family abandoning her, or her being over here all by herself, she made her mind up.
Mm-hmm.
And did it require grit? Yeah. Did it require patience? Oh, heck yeah. Did it require faith like nothing that we can imagine? Yeah, but that resolve, golly, and just the body. It tells me that I need to not be a wave tossed about, that I need to make my mind up and not waver back and forth.
What was that reference, Terry? James what?
1, 5 through 8. It's in the question.
Okay.
It's on page 185 as well, Amber, if you want a reference to the questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Every morning when I try, before my feet hit the ground, I try to remember, and I have this little acronym, and it's WHIP, and it stands for wisdom, humility. You guys heard me say this. Integrity and peace, and those are patience. Either one of them it could be, but it's like, okay, Lord, those are the things, because those are the things that I need to at least see me through this day, or at least ever present in my mind. But the wisdom of the Lord, that is my prayer. That's my prayer.
Reminds me of that song, "I Will Be Done." I'm telling you, I'm going to burn that song out, but that's my prayer times in the morning. So, my longest prayer time is in the morning with my commute. And man, that song is kind of the same thing about, his wisdom is just his will to be done and to accept it. And sometimes I struggle accepting his will. So, that's a good verse.
Terry, what was the I? What did that stand for in your whip?
Integrity. I guess it could be whipped with 2 P's. Peace and patience. Whip it.
I keep playing the song "Whip My Hair Back and Forth" whenever you said that.
I don't know that one, but I'm like, whip good.
So that's what I picture Terry doing in the morning.
I'm not going to be able to hear that song the same anymore.
We're always going to think about wisdom, humility, integrity, and patience now.
And I'm always going to think about Terry just not going.
Yeah, right?
Like this. With her hair.
There you go.
John Paxton's a lucky man. If that's how you wake up in the morning. That's funny.
Oh, dear. That is funny. I'll have to remind him of that, how lucky he is.
On page 186, where it talks about the escape and some of the questions that are there, it talks about, like, where was Rahab's house located? How did she help the spies and the instructions she gave them? Thinking about how she told them to go to the hill country and, help them not only in the escape with that, physically getting them out, but then helping them to know which way to go so that they could avoid the soldiers that were out there looking for them and things. And just, it might not have seemed like something really big to her at the time, but that was something that definitely helped them and helped protect them, so that they could get back to Joshua and Caleb. And as I was reading through that, where it says find God's ways for you, it says, like Rahab, we have opportunities to help others. And it asks about, like, what advice you have given and things like that. And I started thinking about that, and it just, reminded me like over and over again of how many times I've gone through situations, and at the time it makes no sense to me why I was put and why God put me through that particular trial in my life. But yet somewhere down the road that's come full circle, and I've been able to talk to somebody or share advice or insight with somebody, especially as, you know, being in the ministry as a pastor's wife and you know, and teaching Sunday school classes and ladies groups and things like that. There's so many times that you have opportunity to use those things that have been the most difficult parts of your life. And I firmly believe that God puts us through everything for a reason. And, you know, I know you ladies all know that, but it's just that reminder of things. You know, sometimes it's easy to get complacent and to just be silent and not speak up when you really know that there's something. You see a friend or somebody going through something, and you know you have the wisdom to know you've been down that road, and you could give them some advice or some encouragement or things like that. You know, for myself, with the things that I went through with my daughter, you know, when I see other parents that are going through that, I try to be much more open to the Lord's leading and the Lord's prodding of when to speak to them and to say things to them to help and encourage them, and just to pray with them. You know, let them know that there's somebody else out there that cares, that's praying with them and praying for them. And I think that's one of the things that we can be reminded of too. You know, a little bit different and off topic, but the same thing. Just, you know, using what we've been through so that we can help others and give that advice. I know it's easy to be quiet sometimes and not speak up, but I think one of the things that I've learned from Allie's testimony, and I never met Allie and didn't know her, but was boldness. When I think of her, I think of boldness. Everything I've heard about her has made me think that she was somebody who was very bold, and she wasn't ashamed to speak her beliefs about Jesus Christ. And we need to carry on and have that boldness too, and this is another way that we can do it.
You know, it's kind of funny that you should say boldness, because each year I have a word, and this year my word was bold, and I decided on that word it was the first of the year. We were in Napa Valley and we'd gone to church, and the preacher spoke about boldness. I'm like, that's it. That is exactly it. And of course, at the time, I was thinking it was, oh, I'm going to be bold in sharing about plexus. Haha. Little did I know, it was nothing about plexus whatsoever. Like you just said, Katrina, it's being bold about sharing our faith, and bold in doing the things that may make us feel uncomfortable, and bold in reaching out to people that someone else might not reach out to. And it had nothing to do what I originally thought it was going to be about, but and definitely since January 7th, the word boldness has taken on a whole new meaning.
And to me, like the moments that I feel like I have to be bold is because I'm afraid. And there were some questions at the end of this chapter that reiterated. Last week we talked about how Tamar handled fear, and some of these questions were talking about fear, and to what Katrina also said, in addition to Terry, what you were saying, this says Katrina said giving advice to other people because you'd been through it. But this question just says, what kind of advice have you given to others who are fearful? You know, and what Rahab does is she doesn't even know the Lord, and she points them to God, you know, and talks about his power. Like, if he can do this with just a breath, you know, we are fine believing in him and believing in the people that represent him. And so as I was looking at the similarities to both stories, for it to talk about fear again in the little recap, you know, it made me think about, you know, how these two ladies have responded in face of their fear, you know, fear of not knowing what was coming, fear of knowing that, you know, whether it was knowing something bad is coming for everybody else and still being strong in it, or not knowing what was coming at all you know, because things were not as you had planned. How we handle it, but also how we handle it to others when they're walking through that. You know, what advice do we give? Those questions stuck out to me a lot because of everything that you guys have been saying.
You know what just hit me? You know how we tell people, this is kind of similar. You know how we tell people in Plexus, it's like, you don't have to wait till you have your own story. There are so many testimonies of people who this works for. You don't have to have your own to believe. Just cling to the belief that others, that you see working for others. I mean, think about this. Rahab didn't have to have her own story, but she saw the story of others and she clung to it. It's like, yeah, you know, and we can use that for our own strength as well. When we're weak, he's strong. We don't have to, I mean, even in our weakest moment, we can cling, because either we can cling, like Katrina was saying, sharing it from some, listening and hearing it from somebody else's strength. We don't, it's okay when we're not strong, because there's so, it works. It works. He works. We don't have to, I mean, praise God, we have our own story, but when we are lost, or when we're hurting, or when we are at our weakest, somebody else will be strong for us. And that's why I think it's such a, I think the community of the church, not a church, but the church, the believers, the community of believers, this group right here, let alone our big, huge circle of believers, is so important, because we pick each other up. We are there for each other when somebody else is down. That's what I think. Well, y'all. Anything else to add to any of that for tonight?
I don't think so. It was all pretty good to me.
Pretty good. Did you guys realize?
Just imagine how much we're going to have for next week.
Yeah, wait. Well, okay, because I was getting ready to jump ahead again. I'll wait till next week. Yeah, this is good stuff. I don't even know who the next stories are.
I think the next one's about Ruth.
Yeah, I love her. That's a good name. That's a cooler name. Yeah.
We'll have a little baby Ruth.
All right. I'm going to